Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome back to the History AI podcast, where the past isn't just dates and dead guys, it's drama, politics, betrayals, and some pretty epic mustaches. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Today, we're diving into one of the most pivotal, and honestly cinematic, battles in European history, the Battle of Vienna in 1683. You've got sieges, sultans, winged hussars, and croissants.
Seriously. This episode has it all. And if you've never heard of this battle before, buckle up. Because without this showdown, European history, and breakfast, might look very different.
Let's roll back the clock and set the stage.
Right, let's rewind a bit and really set the scene here. By the late 1600s, the Ottoman Empire had been a major world power for over 2 centuries. They were the heavyweight champs of the Islamic world, politically, militarily, and culturally.
Exactly. Picture it, they controlled the Balkans, most of Hungary, the Middle East, North Africa, and big parts of Eastern Europe. Their influence stretched from the gates of Vienna to the Arabian Sea. And they'd been expanding westward since, like forever.
Yeah, going all the way back to the fall of Constantinople in 1453, they'd been on the move. One conquest after another. And they weren't just pushing borders, they were reshaping the balance of power in Europe.
Fast forward to the late 17th century, and tensions between the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg monarchy were at a boiling point. The Ottomans had already taken most of Hungary and were looking to finish what they'd started in 1529, during their first attempt to capture Vienna under Suleiman the Magnificent.
Spoiler alert, that first siege didn't go great for the Ottomans. Bad weather, poor logistics, and some surprisingly scrappy Viennese defenders forced them to retreat. But they never forgot about Vienna. It was the symbolic and strategic prize.
Enter the 1680s. The Ottomans see their chance. Europe is kind of a mess, there are religious divisions, political rivalries, and no strong united front. The Holy Roman Empire, led by Emperor Leopold I, is distracted by conflicts in the West and internal discontent.
That's when Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa Pasha steps into the spotlight. He's ambitious, really ambitious, and he wants glory. He convinces the Sultan, Mehmed IV, that it's time for a final push into Central Europe. This isn't just about territory, it's about prestige, power, and planting the Ottoman banner in the heart of Christendom.
So in spring of 1683, Kara Mustafa launches a massive military campaign. We're talking somewhere between 120,000 and 150,000 troops, Turks, Tartars, Janissaries, engineers, artillery units. One of the largest armies ever assembled in Europe at the time.
And here's the kicker, this wasn't a smash and grab. Kara Mustafa wanted to take Vienna intact. He reportedly carried the keys to the city with him, before the siege even started.
That's confidence or hubris.
Why not both?
The Ottomans reach Vienna in July 1683. Emperor Leopold and much of the nobility had already fled. The city is left under the command of Count Ernst Rudiger von Starhemberg and a garrison of about 15,000 men, facing an army 10 times their size.
And so begins one of the most intense and suspenseful sieges in history. The Ottomans set up camp, dig trenches, and start tunneling under the walls. Meanwhile, inside Vienna, it's desperation mode, food is running out, disease is spreading, and all hope is pinned on someone, anyone, coming to their rescue.
Spoiler alert. Help is on the way, but it'll take weeks to arrive. The clock is ticking. Vienna just has to hold out long enough. Alright, so it's mid-July 1683. Kara Mustafa's massive Ottoman army has arrived at the gates of Vienna and begins what would become one of the most iconic sieges in European history.
And we're not talking about just parking a few cannons outside the walls. This was a full-blown, slow-burn siege, Ottoman style. Tents stretching across the plains, artillery rolling into position, and a maze of trenches and saps. Those are underground tunnels meant to blow the walls apart from below.
The Ottomans knew Vienna wasn't going to fall in a day. So instead of a direct assault, Kara Mustafa opted for a war of attrition. He figured, starve them and sap them to break them.
The city, meanwhile, was in survival mode. Remember, the defenders only had around 15,000 troops, led by Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg. That guy deserves a medal just for sheer stubbornness. He'd been wounded multiple times in earlier wars and was suffering from illness during the siege, but he stayed in command the entire time.
Inside the city, conditions were brutal. Food was scarce. Civilians and soldiers were rationing bread, meat, even clean water. As the weeks dragged on, hunger turned to disease. Morale teetered. But somehow, the defenders held together.
Meanwhile, outside the city, the Ottomans were methodically digging tunnels beneath Vienna's thick bastion walls. They packed these tunnels with barrels of gunpowder, sometimes hundreds of pounds at a time, and then set them off to blow holes in the defenses. Imagine the ground trembling beneath your feet, then boom, entire sections of wall collapsing.
And these weren't minor explosions. One detonation created a breach so large that only desperate, hand-to-hand fighting kept the Ottomans from pouring into the city. Starhemberg and his troops would rush to patch up craters with rubble, wagons, anything they could find.
Kara Mustafa, on the other hand, was getting impatient. He'd been ordered by Sultan Mehmed IV to capture Vienna, but to avoid destroying it, a weird combination of conquest and preservation. He wanted to turn Vienna into a jewel in the Ottoman crown, not reduce it to ashes.
But that hesitation probably cost him. His engineers warned him that time wasn't on his side. And they were right, because outside the siege lines, trouble was brewing. A coalition of Christian forces was gathering under the Holy League, led by King Jan III Sobieski of Poland.
The Holy League, basically Europe's Avengers Assemble moment, wasn't easy to coordinate. Different rulers, different religions, different agendas. But the threat of losing Vienna brought them together. It took weeks to gather the armies and march them into position.
Inside Vienna, people were praying for relief. Literally. Churches were packed. Bells rang daily. Starhemberg had messengers sneaking out to deliver updates and beg for speed. And they kept watching the hills for signs of allies.
And finally, by early September, smoke and dust could be seen on the horizon. The relief force, led by Sobieski, was almost there. But inside the city, they had no way of knowing for sure. The siege continued. More mines, more countermines, more blood.
The defenders even started launching countermining operations. That means they dug tunnels to intercept and destroy the Ottoman mines before they could be detonated. Basically, underground warfare. It's like 17th century whack-a-mole, but with explosives and swords.
And all the while, the Ottomans kept pressing in. By early September, they were within a few feet of breaching the last major walls. Kara Mustafa was this close to victory. But he had no idea that a storm was about to hit him, from the hills just to the northwest. Alright, so by September 11th, 1683, Kara Mustafa has no clue that things are about to go very sideways. He's laser-focused on finishing off Vienna, probably thinking, one more mine, one more breach, and the city is mine.
But up on the Kahlenberg Heights, overlooking the plains to the northwest of the city, the Holy League Relief Army has arrived, and it's huge. Around 70,000 to 80,000 troops, made up of forces from Poland, the Holy Roman Empire, Bavaria, Saxony, and other German states. It's like the medieval version of a massive team-up crossover episode.
Leading the coalition? King Jan III Sobieski of Poland. This guy was a seasoned warrior, a tactician, and straight-up legend. He'd marched his troops hundreds of miles from Krakow to Vienna, through tough terrain, with little rest, to save the city.
And they did it fast. I mean, most armies in that era moved at the speed of molasses. But Sobieski moved his men in a few weeks. The Ottomans weren't expecting help to arrive until much later, if at all.
So here's how the battle breaks down. It's the morning of September 12, 1683. At dawn, Sobieski and the Holy League launch a full-scale, multi-pronged assault from the hills. The terrain was rough, forested slopes, narrow paths, but it gave the Allies the element of surprise.
The attack begins with infantry skirmishes and artillery fire, mostly to draw the Ottomans into defensive positions. The Holy League troops push through the forest in coordinated waves, Imperial forces on the left, Bavarians and Saxons in the center, and Poles on the right.
Kara Mustafa is caught off guard. His army, spread out around the city, had dug in for a siege, not a field battle. It takes time to reorient your entire force when you've been camped out in tents for 2 months and your men are sleep-deprived, underfed, and busy digging tunnels.
And now they're being attacked from behind. Panic starts to set in. The Ottomans put up resistance, especially their elite Janissary corps, but they're being pushed back, slowly but surely, through the day.
And then comes the moment everyone remembers, the largest cavalry charge in recorded history.
Around 4 p.m., as the sun starts dipping low, 18,000 cavalry assemble on the heights, including about 3,000 Polish Winged Hussars. These guys were the elite shock troops of the era, massive horses, long lances, heavy armor, and those iconic feathered wings that made them look like literal angels of vengeance.
Imagine standing on the open plains and hearing that thunder rolling in. Sobieski himself leads the charge, down the slopes, into the Ottoman lines. It's like a tsunami of hooves and steel.
The Ottomans never stood a chance. Their lines buckle, and chaos erupts. Camp followers flee, soldiers desert. Kara Mustafa tries to organize a retreat, but it's way too late. The cavalry plows through his command post and tears into the siege camp.
Meanwhile, inside Vienna, the defenders hear the commotion and launch a sally. That's a coordinated breakout, joining the attack from the other side. The Ottoman army is now being hit from both directions.
By nightfall, it's over. The Ottomans are retreating in disarray, abandoning cannons, tents, even their treasury. Vienna is saved, and the Christian coalition has just handed the Ottoman Empire its most devastating defeat in over a century.
And Kara Mustafa? He didn't get a better luck next time from the Sultan. He was executed 2 months later in Belgrade, strangled with a silk cord, the traditional Ottoman method for removing high-ranking failures.
Talk about a brutal performance review.
But seriously, this wasn't just a military victory. It marked the beginning of the long Ottoman retreat from Central Europe. Over the next decades, the Habsburgs would push them out of Hungary and the Balkans.
And the battle itself? It echoed across Europe. Vienna was still standing, Christendom was safe, at least for now, and Jan Sobieski was hailed as the savior of the West.
Alright, so the Battle of Vienna is over, but its impact? That's just getting started. This wasn't just a dramatic victory, it was a major turning point in European and Ottoman history.
Yeah, think of this as the beginning of the Ottoman decline in Europe. Before 1683, they'd been advancing pretty steadily westward for over 250 years. After Vienna, the tide turns. It's not immediate collapse, but it's the start of a very long retreat.
Over the next few decades, the Holy Roman Empire, Poland, Venice, and later Russia begin to push the Ottomans back. By the end of the Great Turkish War in 1699, with the Treaty of Karlowitz, the Ottomans lose most of Hungary, Transylvania, and parts of the Balkans.
And just as important, this battle reshaped European unity, at least for a hot second. You had Protestants and Catholics putting aside their differences to face a common enemy. I mean, it didn't last forever, but it showed that even deeply divided states could coordinate when they needed to.
It also gave a huge boost to the Habsburg dynasty. Emperor Leopold I had been kind of sidelined before the battle. But afterward, with Vienna safe and the Ottomans on the run, his influence skyrocketed. The Habsburgs would go on to dominate Central European politics for the next century and a half.
And don't forget Poland's moment in the spotlight. Jan Sobieski became a celebrity across Europe. Seriously, he got letters of thanks from the Pope, kings, nobles, you name it. Though Poland itself was headed toward its own decline later, Sobieski's heroics were a last great hurrah.
Religiously, the victory was spun as a divine triumph, a kind of Christian miracle against the Islamic Empire. It intensified religious identity on both sides. In Europe, it was a symbol of civilization saved. In the Ottoman world, it was seen as a bitter defeat with major political consequences.
And now, let's talk pastries.
Because no epic battle is complete without a breakfast legend. So here's the deal, according to popular lore, when the Ottomans fled, they left behind sacks of coffee beans. A clever guy named Jerzy Franciszek Kulczycki, a Polish noble who had disguised himself as a Turk to sneak messages through enemy lines, was given the beans as a reward.
And supposedly, he opened Vienna's first coffee house. Now, was he the actual first? It's debatable. But the idea stuck, and Vienna became a hub for European coffee culture.
Then there's the croissant. The legend goes that Viennese bakers, who had worked through the nights during the siege and heard the sounds of tunneling, were credited with alerting the defenders to an imminent mine explosion.
As a reward, they were allowed to bake a special pastry in the shape of the Ottoman crescent moon, symbolizing the defeat of the enemy. And voila, the birth of the croissant. Crescent-shaped vengeance, folks.
Now, historians say that story is probably more myth than fact. Croissant-like pastries existed in the Islamic world and Europe before this, but still, you can't not tell the story. It's just too good.
And besides, whether or not the croissant was invented because of the battle, the symbolism stuck. Coffee, pastries, and Viennese cafe culture all became wrapped up in the mythology of resistance and revival.
So next time you're sipping a cappuccino or tearing into a buttery crescent, remember, you're enjoying the edible legacy of one of the most important battles in European history. So, to recap, 1683, the Ottomans roll up with the biggest army Europe's seen in a while, Vienna's under siege, the odds look grim, and then Sobieski and the Winged Hussars save the day.
It's like history's version of the underdog sports movie, except with more armor and fewer halftime shows.
Thanks for riding into battle with us today, folks. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate us 5 stars. It really helps us grow and keeps the show alive.
Don't forget to subscribe, share it with your history-loving friends, and follow us on social media. You can suggest topics for future episodes. We're always listening.
And hey, check out our new merch. We've got a God Hussars t-shirt. Links in the show notes.
Remember, all our episodes are evergreen, so you can listen anytime, whether you're cramming for a history test or just want to impress someone on a date. Hey, did you know the croissant is political?
We'll catch you next time on the History AI podcast. Until then, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and always watch the hills for charging cavalry. Wave goodbye to sugar-loaded boosts and say hello to Strike Force Energy. The energy drink additive revolutionizing how you power up, all without a single calorie or sugar. Just a squeeze, and you're set for action. Ready to make the switch? Visit strikeforceenergy.com. And for our listeners, spark your savings with an exclusive 20% discount. Just use code UTSALAX24 at checkout. Remember, UTSALAX24. Strike Force Energy, elevate every sip.